Hello everybody, Falcon197 here. I'm back with another Crysis tutorial, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make functional light systems for your multiplayer maps. In looking at some of the maps that have been custom for instant action or for power struggle, one thing I've noticed is that there were a couple of attempts by some of the map designers to create a functional light system that you could either have players run around and push switches to turn lights on or off, or else at a certain time of day you would have a light programmed with a time of day trigger to turn on or off on the map somewhere. This was really nice in theory because having lights on during the nighttime sequence can be useful for helping navigate across dark terrain, but lights in multiplayer only seem to work for the host, and the reason for that is because of the flow graph system. For however Crytek designed their flow graphs around the light entities, whenever you flow graph a light entity to turn on or off, it only works for the host. Regular players can't see it, and so for the longest time, it seems like a bunch of people were searching for a way or to work around this so that everybody could have their lights and be able to use them. And I haven't seen any solid prototypes for how to do this, but I was able to devise my own method for having a functional light system, and I applied it to my map Base, which was recently released, by the way, for public download. Feel free to head over to crydev.com and check that out, or look on my YouTube channel. But at any rate, today I'm going to be showing you how to make a functional light system using a few tools related to the flow graph system. If you recall, my last video was about how to flow graph and set up working keypad controlled doors. Today you're going to see something that's rather similar because once again we're going to be using door entities, only this time there's going to be a few other elements tied in to create a dynamic light system. So I've already got my light pole set up here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy over something that I've already set up beforehand as a working light. I'm going to explain the elements one at a time. I'm going to illustrate how they all are connected, and then I'm going to put them in place so that everybody can see how they work. So let me just bring this right in. Now there's a couple things. For setting up a light on this light pole, I've obviously got to bring in a light entity, and I've configured this light in the form of a beam, meaning it's got a texture set of a light beam and uses in real time. It does cast a shadow. I've already set up the specs for other things, but it is active. Now if I was to flow graph it to be inactive, it would turn off and you wouldn't see it. See, it's kind of cycling there. But I've got its radius programmed to 50, so that illuminates a big sizable area around the base of this light pole, and it's directly above it, so it casts a shadow straight down, kind of giving the illusion that all of these light bulbs, are providing illumination when in fact I've only got one. So I've got my light in place, and I've also got a particle effect to simulate a glow around the light bulbs. That way, again, it adds to kind of the simulation that all of them are turned on, even though they in fact are not. So with that set up, now I've got to go and explain a couple of things here. First of all, to turn this light on and off, it doesn't just enable or disable like the standard attempts have been to make it for the multiplayer, because as I've already said, that only works for the host. As a matter of fact, in this case, this light moves, and the way it moves is I have used the group feature to attach it to a door, which if you zoom in very closely here, you can see a wireframe outline of a door entity. Now I've done a couple things with this door. I'll list them out for you. The first thing is I've assigned the object to it, which is the shape of a pen, and the reason for that is I want this moving part to be small and not easily detectable, because it would look kind of obvious if you saw something hovering above a light pole that's moving up and down whenever you turn the light on. Speaking of up and down, that's precisely the way it moves. I have it programmed to move -1 meters on the Z-plane, so that means it's going to move down whenever I tell it to move, and when it moves down it's going to bring this light with it and also the particle effect. So that brings me to the next element that I'm going to incorporate, which is probably going to help answer the question, why on earth would you want a light to move in order to turn it on or off? In Crysis, there are a number of useful entity features and a few other odds and ends, but one of the most recent ones I've discovered how to use is called the Viz area. And what the Viz area does is it is a selectable zone that anything inside that zone is rendered separately from everything else that's visible on the map. So if I was to create a Viz area, say, and just put one room in it, the only thing that would be rendered in that viz area is the room. Nothing beyond that room would be, because that's all that's located in the viz area. This can be used in a number of ways, and Crytek makes handy use of viz areas on all of their maps in order to save on level resources so everything loads a lot faster. It's particularly useful in rooms that have lights, because lights in Crysis and in the CryEngine have a tendency to eat up a lot of resources just on their own. Part of the thing that some people might notice and may or may not complain about on base if they play around on it is there's a lot of light poles, but only 5 of them work. That's because if I was to leave the light system rigged up for all 31 of them, you'd get massive amounts of lag if you were to turn them all on at the same time during a nighttime feature. You'd be able to see, but you wouldn't be able to move very fast, very far. At any rate, we've got our viz area, and I've copied this over again from another light pole. You'll notice it's kind of a small box shape. I've already programmed it to be this size. You can set not only the size, but you can place however many number of points you want whenever you place a viz area. But in setting up this light, I'm shooting for a box about this size, and I'm going to make 2 of them. And what I'm going to do with them is I'm going to put one immediately on the top here, right on top of the particle effect. Now you notice when I moved it over the particle effect, it disappears. The reason for that is it's now located in the viz area and is being rendered separately inside of it. So if I scroll into the viz area, you notice the world kind of disappears, and I can see the particle glow effect here. That's because it's the only thing being rendered. So it's hidden from view in the normal world because it's inside this tiny little box that's doing its own rendering. That's one of 2 boxes I need to create. The second one I'm going to copy in on the Z plane, and I'm going to raise it up all the way to where the light is. Now you notice I do this, the light at the bottom of the screen goes away for the same reason, because now it is being rendered separately inside this viz area. I can't really go in and see it because there's nothing else in there to see to load. But see, I've placed, for how my light is set up, I've got my light at the top, my particle effect at the bottom, and then my door at the top, which controls the movement of the 2. So what's going to happen is I have these 2 entities, the light and the particle, inside each their own viz area. They can't be seen in the normal world, but when this door moves them, they come out of the viz areas. So see, it gives the appearance that the light is turning on and off without having to disable or enable the light, because disabling or enabling it in a flow graph wouldn't work for anyone except for the host, whereas doing it this way with the door works for everyone. So as a final little step here, I've got to link this to a switch in order to make it controllable, because there's not really any way to use that door. Now, I've already got a flow graph here set up for the primary light system that's already been activated, but I'm going to bring in this entity, which is the door hovering above the light pole the lights are linked to, and then I'm going to bring in this switch that I've positioned down here, which is another door, but it's programmed with the model of a flip switch there. So I'm going to link the 2 so that the switch down here, or the door down here, when it is opened, the door above the light pole opens or moves, and then when it's closed, it moves back into position, or moves in or out of the viz areas I've set up. So now that that's rigged, I can jump into the world here. My light is turned off if I look up at it, but if I go over and hit the switch, it turns on. That was just done with the flow graph I just set up, and it took me 1 moment to do. And I've got sound effects rigged to the door here, the switch, so that whenever it is in motion, you hear that little clack noise. It sounds like a nice turn off, turn on function. And if we look up, we see the light pole appears to be glowing. That's thanks to our particle effect. And we've got shadows down here as if all the bulbs are turned on. Nice little bright light. It's nighttime, but I can see. Alright, so this can also be used a few other ways. I've found various ways to incorporate it throughout base and other parts of the map whenever I needed a light to come on for any such thing. I didn't go so far as to make every light in every building switchable, because that would have taken an extremely long amount of time, but I did program a few other things aside from just the base lighting system on the light poles that really adds a little bit of realism and a touch of creative potential to the rest of the map, because this is a problem I know a bunch of people have attempted to solve other ways, through bringing the lights into the flow graphs, and that hasn't worked, but this does, and it works rather nicely if you set it up properly. Well, that is my short and sweet tutorial on how to do functional lights for multiplayer maps. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see other tutorials like this, or if you just want to look at some of the projects I've got going on. I'd be happy to share what I'm doing, and hopefully give some people some tools to put into their own maps. I know CryEngine 2 is a little bit outdated now, but there's no reason this can't be used on CryEngine 3 for some of those newer projects and newer generation things. Alright, thanks for watching.